The Dodgers may be clearing some money. Does that mean Roki Sasaki's on the way? We'll talk about it. Let's get locked on Dodgers.
You are Locked On Dodgers, your daily Los Angeles Dodgers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yo, Dodger fans. Welcome to Locked On Dodgers. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, the #1 local sports daily podcast network. Locked On, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. From big upsets to game-winning drives, the NFL playoffs are better with FanDuel. New customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets, guaranteed, win or lose. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. This is the daily podcast covering the World Series champion Los Angeles Dodgers, bringing you the smart fans' perspective on our boys in blue. You can find us wherever you find podcasts and on YouTube. All you got to do is search for Locked On Dodgers. You can become an everydayer by listening or watching every day. And you can make that easier on yourself by subscribing to get notified when our episodes are ready or when we're going live on YouTube like we are here on Sunday night. If this is your first time listening or watching, welcome. I'm Vince Samperio. That's Jeff Snider. And we are both lifelong Dodger fans. And we've been doing this podcast here going on 7 years now. And Jeff and I have covered the team in a few different ways. Personally, we've covered the team together via Dodger Podcast for about 9 years. This Dodger Podcast, 7 years. And, we've seen a lot of Dodgers. We've talked a lot of Dodgers. And, the Dodgers are a big part of our lives in certain ways. And we are here once again to talk about the Dodgers. While there was no hard news around the team, there was some news directly involving the Dodgers, or some, somewhat news directly involving the Dodgers, some more Dodgers adjacent. So we're going to get into all that, starting with Roki Sasaki. Roki Sasaki, it's January 12th as we are here live on YouTube on Sunday night. Still not going to sign in for another 3 more days at the very least because of waiting for the new international signing period, which leads us to talk about the Dodgers and them maybe backing off or asking commitments to wait in order to keep some money available for Roki Sasaki. They did lose one prospect who is now going to sign with the Pirates. Jeff, do you think this is them just preparing themselves because they're going to get Roki, or just preparing themselves in case?
I assume they're pretty confident in their chances to get Sasaki. I think that, a lot of what we've talked about, the fact that unless Joel Wolf has just been not playing it straight at all with what Sasaki's looking for, there is no better fit than the Dodgers. And I think the Dodgers are even smarter than you and me, definitely recognize that as well. And so I think they are putting all their eggs in the Roki basket as far as the international pool goes. They backed out on 2 of these guys. One of them, like you said, Daryl Morrell, has already signed with the Pirates instead. It's kind of an interesting thing because he ended up getting, a lot more money from the Pirates than what the Dodgers had committed to him anyway. And so maybe he was looking for an opportunity when maybe he had realized, oh, wow, I was committed for too little money originally. And so he wasn't heartbroken at the possibility of going somewhere else. The other one that they've kind of released from the commitment, or whatever, however you want to word it. There's no real wording for this because this doesn't happen very often, is Orlando Patino, who is a smaller bonus and hasn't yet agreed with anybody else that I've seen. So they might lose him. They do have one bigger prospect, Talon Serrano, who is even bigger bonus than Daryl Morrell. And as far as we know so far, that one's still going to go through. He'll stick with the Dodgers. But yeah, the fact is the Dodgers, I think, are confident they're going to get Roki, and now they are in the process of, okay, let's clear up as much money for him as we can. We may see them try to trade for international pool money. I'm interested to see if any teams will trade with the Dodgers that pool money. I don't know how petty Major League Baseball teams are because if Roki picks the Dodgers, it's not going to be a money decision necessarily. It's just going to be the Dodgers. How much money can we give him? And so it's not like, I'm going to pick a team at random. I'm going to call them the Expos since they don't exist anymore. It's not like the Expos aren't going to trade their international pool money to the Dodgers because they think they might be able to use it to sign Roki Sasaki. It would have to just be pettiness, and I don't know if that kind of pettiness exists among major league teams. I'm interested to see, but I assume the Dodgers are going to try to trade for some pool money. They're going to, obviously clear up some of this. Last I saw, as of right now, the Dodgers have like $3.6 million available to offer to Roki. Maybe that's enough to get the job done. But again, Roki's decision, if it was going to be based on money, he would have waited 2 more years and got a couple $100 million like Yoshinobu Yamamoto did.
Yeah, and that's why for me it's kind of interesting. Like, if you're loading up on money, maybe you've heard something from his side. I would imagine that, of all the teams that submitted pitches, of all the teams that have met with him, they've had to some teams have had to have been told, hey, you're probably not going to get him. So I wouldn't, I wouldn't back out of your commitments or not sign certain guys. And, you would at least you would hope that's the case. Like, there's no benefit to Joe Wolf and Roki Sasaki telling teams like, that don't have a chance, not telling them something. And I guess, in 3 days, we'll probably have a little bit clearer picture of what that is. And, if there's teams that we thought were in on Roki that end up going through with all their signings or spending all their international bonus money, then, that could tell us who's in, who's out, whatever the case is. But I do think it's the right move regardless, whether it's the Dodgers have word that they're going to get him and they just want to clear as much money as possible for him, or whether they're just doing that in order to, better their chances. It makes sense. Roki Sasaki is the type of guy you go on all in on because you're signing someone that's going to be in your rotation this season, realistically. Whereas compared to when you sign, all these 16, 17, sometimes 18-year-olds, they're probably not going to be around for 5-6 years. And, the Dodgers have spent a lot of money in international signings that haven't really worked out. So why not go after someone that at the very least gives you an immediate chance to see if that money works out?
Yeah, there's no such thing as a sure thing anywhere, but that's especially true in international free agency. Even, you look at some of the guys who end up being great were signed for very little money. And some of the, remember Hector Oliveira was the huge signing that, and he ended up bouncing between teams and eventually, out of baseball. And some of that was for reasons other than his skill. But there was the guy who, I still don't remember the name of the Braves GM who got banned over cheating with prospects, but the guy he cheated with, the prospect he cheated to get, whose name just popped out of my head too. He was declared a free agent as part of that whole process, signed with the Angels, and never did make the big leagues. And that's like a guy lost his career to sign that guy, and that guy ended up being nothing. And I have a baseball card of him. I can see the card. I just can't see the name at the bottom of the card in my mind. But anyway, there's no such thing as a sure thing. But when it comes to Roki Sasaki, he is much closer to a sure thing than anybody else. That whether it's Darryl Morel or Orlando Patino or anybody else the Dodgers might sign in this international period, like you said, Roki Sasaki will probably pitch in the big leagues this year and pitch a lot in the big leagues and probably pitch reasonably well. And, talent-wise, this is much more like a bonus first-round draft pick rather than, and I made the comparison to Steven Strasburg the other day. I looked at numbers. Sasaki is about 2 years older than Strasburg was when he was drafted. So it's not straight one-to-one comparison, but, Steven Strasburg, so he's about the age that Steven Strasburg was when he had established himself as one of the best pitchers in baseball, and so, even if he's a year behind that progression, that's still pretty good. And so, yeah, it makes sense to go all in on this guy. Obviously, if you miss out on Roki and you lost prospects because you were going all in on him, that'll suck. I don't think that's going to happen, though.
Yeah, and again, it's just one of the risks that you take. But I got to imagine there's some word, whether it's you're a finalist or we're going to you, but we're not going to announce it until January 20th or whatever it is. Like, there's got to be something.
Or even Andrew Friedman hearing from buddies who run other teams, oh yeah, they told us we're out, and Friedman doing the math. Okay, well, I haven't heard that yet, so who knows what's going on, but it seems like they're pretty confident.
Yeah, it seemed like it was so long to get to this point, and now we're at the point where it's all almost going to come to a head. So we'll continue to monitor that situation. Again, he can't sign until January 15th, or can't decide on a team until January 15th, and realistically probably won't do that. I would imagine he's going to meet with teams again in person or with other players, since the first time he didn't allow players. But we'll see what happens. Roki Sasaki is one starting pitcher the Dodgers can get. Would they be in the market for another starting pitcher if the price is right, especially one that's already been with them and helped them win a World Series? We'll talk about it. So make sure to keep it locked on Dodgers. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. From big upsets to game-winning drives, the NFL playoffs are better with FanDuel. And right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. The FanDuel app gives you everything you need for live bets, same-game parlays, and so much more. We've had 5 NFL playoff games so far that were all fun in their own way. Probably some were more fun if you had some money in the game, if you had put $5 down and or had your $200 in bonus bets already ready to put down, because there was some blowout games, but there was ways to win money, and FanDuel was there to help you out if you wanted to. And right now, if you go to FanDuel.com and join, you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets after you place that first $5 bet, win or lose. That's FanDuel.com. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. I want to thank you for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen of the day, last listen of the day, any listen of the day. We know with live shows, it's 9:12 p.m. on Sunday. We might be your last listen of the day before you go to sleep, or we might be your first listen of the day if you listen to it via the pod and wherever you get podcasts in the morning, whatever it is. We appreciate you listening. If you're on YouTube already and you want something else to watch, you can go to Locked On Sports Today, Locked On Sports Los Angeles. Those are 2 24/7 streaming channels brought to you by the Locked On Podcast Network. All right, Jeff. So Jack Flaherty is a name we haven't talked about in a while. It seems like nobody's really talked about it in a while. We haven't really seen a market based on reports that are out there. There hasn't really been a market that's been established for Flaherty. He got linked to the Orioles at one point, but the Orioles have, got a couple other under the radar signings that maybe they're going to try to go with. And now we're getting to the point where we're about a month away from pitchers and catchers reporting. And the latest report on Jack Flaherty and maybe some of these other guys like Pete Alonso, Anthony Santander, those guys on the offensive side, is that they may be interested in deals similar to Blake Snell and Matt Chapman and Jordan Montgomery and Cody Bellinger a few years ago, or a couple years ago, where you take a shorter term deal with opt-outs and try to get the money early on and try to, basically bet on yourself in a way, but also still get your money if it doesn't happen. We've seen it happen positively with Blake Snell and Matt Chapman. Blake Snell obviously signed the big deal with the Dodgers. Matt Chapman signed that extension with the Giants. And we've seen it work the other way with Cody Bellinger and Jordan Montgomery, who didn't necessarily establish a new market for themselves, but still had that money because they just opted in.
Yeah, it worked out okay for them so far. They're still getting paid probably more than their teams wish they were. But yeah, it definitely didn't work out on the team side. And yeah, I guess Pete Alonso, his people have said that they are willing to do that kind of deal, a 3-year deal with opt-outs. And so that has Ken Rosenthal speculating on that with regard to Flaherty and Santander. The thing that's different about Flaherty than Alonso and Santander is Alonso and Santander both have qualifying offers attached. Flaherty doesn't. And if he were to go this route, he actually would have a qualifying offer next year probably. So if he were to sign with, the Dodgers or whoever else, a 3-year deal, opt out after the first year, he has a good year, he opts out, the Dodgers would make him a qualifying offer, he would turn it down, which then affects his free agency next year. It's a little bit surprising that he hasn't signed yet because he doesn't have a qualifying offer. And, we've seen Corbin Burns, who had a qualifying offer. He signed. Who was the other? Max Fried. Max Fried signed, even though he had a qualifying offer. And you would think that Flaherty would have signed by now, since he's not bound by a qualifying offer. And what Rosenthal said is Teams perhaps want to see Flaherty put together 2 consecutive seasons of elite performance. He produced a 3.17 ERA for the Tigers and Dodgers last season, then was inconsistent for the Dodgers in the postseason. Before that, he had a rocky 2023 coming off 2 straight injury-marred campaigns. And yeah, I think that's really what it boils down to is, if Jack Flaherty's looking for a 6-year deal, there's probably not a market for that. And so Flaherty might end up having to take this sort of short deal with opt-outs out of necessity, whereas these other guys, it would be like, it's a strategic move. You can only get the qualifying offer once. So if you're Santander or Alonso, you sign this deal, opt out after next year, and boom, hit free agency again next year, hopefully after a good year, and there's no qualifying offer attached, and you've improved your situation. For Flaherty, it might just be he still needs to prove himself. He might be – it's funny if you look at his performance in 2024 and Walker Buehler's and how much better Flaherty was, and then realize that they might be in about the same boat, similar age and similar need to prove themselves. For Flaherty, it's proving that he can be good 2 years in a row. For Buehler, it's proving that he's really back after he looked like he's probably back in the postseason. But still, both of them having to go into take a prove-it deal, which you wouldn't really think if you were just looking at their stats.
Yeah, and the other difference is, Buehler's showing that he's back. Flaherty is kind of stuck in the am I a 1 or 2 or am I a 3 or 4 type deal. And, 3 or 4 money is a lot different than 1 or 2 money. So, realistically for him, it would make sense to bet on himself and try and go somewhere again. The Tigers, going back to the Tigers has been mentioned, but, I don't know how much they're willing to spend. But what we really want to get into now is, should the Dodgers be in on him if that is the case? And, realistically, it's if Roki Sasaki picks the Dodgers, I would imagine there's no chance the Dodgers go after Flaherty unless it's literally a cheap deal that they, really can't say no to, I guess. But if they don't sign Sasaki, then – and there is a chance to get him on one of these deals, whether, 2-3 years, high AAV, but he can opt out. I don't say yes for sure, but I don't really say no for sure. I say, well, that sounds something like intriguing, I guess.
Yeah, intriguing is a good word. It would be interesting if he came back to the Dodgers, because when the Dodgers acquired him, he basically slotted in as their number 1 starter at that point, because Yamamoto was hurt at the time and Glasnow's health was questionable, and Buehler was still terrible, and so Flaherty, and he was their number 1 starter in the postseason. Didn't pitch like it, but, mathematically he was their number 1 starter. And that's a role that he definitely would not fill on the 2025 Dodgers, which might actually work in his favor to come in and be, okay, you're going to be our 4th starter because we've got Glasnow and Snell and Yamamoto. You're going to be a 4th starter, which I don't think teams are going to be looking at, there's so much, it's not a win-loss record thing. And so it's how you pitch. And so next year in free agency, teams aren't going to be looking at, well, he pitched really well, but it was as the 4th starter. Nobody cares about it. He pitched really well. That's what they're going to care about. And I think maybe having a little bit less pressure of, you're not the ace. You don't have to be the ace. Just go out there and give us 6 innings every 6th day. Could be a good situation for him. For me, on the Dodgers side of things, I'd feel much more comfortable with a straight 1-year deal. Like what is that what Walker Buehler? He's just a straight 1-year deal, right? There's no opt-outs, no options. It's just, or was there
maybe an option, but I don't think so.
I don't think so. And I think I'd feel more comfortable with that. Just, okay, Jack, let's do one more year, because we know that Jack Flaherty loves being a Dodger, all that stuff. And so if he pitches so well, hits free agency again, and the Dodgers actually want him back, they believe that he's now somebody they want to commit to long-term, they still have the upper hand there. It's just, removing some of their risk, but it is, by definition, removing risk from the Dodgers. It's putting risk on Flaherty, and that may not be something he's interested in doing. But that's kind of I wouldn't worry too much about the amount of money, because we already know Dodgers in 2025 are going to be over the top luxury tax threshold anyway. It's not my money, et cetera, et cetera. And so if they decide that they want to pay him a good amount of money for a 1-year contract, I'd feel good about that, because it's a 1-year commitment when they're already paying a ton of taxes. It's not going to change anything about their draft situation or the international pool situation or any of that stuff. That stuff's already set in stone. It's just money at that point and not my money. So I'd be fine with whatever on a 1-year deal. And honestly, even if they sign Roki Sasaki, I'd be fine with Jack Flaherty on a 1-year deal because there's enough question marks with Tony Gonsolin and Dustin May and Len and Knack and Justin Robleski and everybody else you want to name, Ben Kasperius, all those guys. There's a lot worse situations than having Jack Flaherty as your number 5 starter in a 6-man rotation.
Yeah, I mean, there's really no such thing as a bad 1-year deal, as they say. And I think for Flaherty, yeah, it's either one of those where you try to find one of those teams that can give you maybe a 3 years, whatever, 60 something mil, 70 mil with the opt outs, and hope that that's good enough, or you sign a 1-year deal with a mediocre team, and hey, I might get traded at halfway through the season again if I'm good. And then if I prove myself, I can get a qualifying offer and I can maybe still show that I'm good and, I can sign a longer term deal. But yeah, when it comes to the Dodgers specifically, yeah, I think 1-year deal is really the only way that makes sense for it. And, for him, it's kind of similar to what we said when Walker Buehler signed. Like, do you want to come back to a team where you can showcase that you're good enough, but you're not necessarily showcasing that you're a 1 or 2 unless there's injuries that happen and you're back in that 1 or 2 slot. Because right now he would slot in, 4th at the very least. And I don't know if that's something that somebody that, wants to showcase themselves would want to do. But, he did say he wants to come back to LA. And, if I feel like if it's between betting on yourself and coming back to the Dodgers on a 1-year deal, you could do a lot worse.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd say 1 year, $25 million. And, he's only made $30 million in his career total. So $25 million is it's a big bump over what he made last year. It's, obviously good money and gives him a chance to reset.
Yeah. There's apparently another player that wants to play for the Dodgers, but this guy's a little more firm in his stance. At least, he was in an interview, so we'll talk about that. So make sure to keep it locked on Dodgers. I want to thank you for being an everydayer. If you are one, an everydayer is just someone that listens or watches every day. You can, if you're afraid of commitment and 5 days is too much for you, you can, up your intake by 1 episode a week. And, if you like that and like the way it feels, I think you can continue to up that one episode a week until you get to the 5. And now you're an everydayer. And, now you're a fan that we appreciate just a little bit more than people that aren't everydayers. And, you can also become Locked On Dodgers Insider if you go to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnDodgers. It's a text message service where you'll get updates from us with anything regarding the Dodgers or Dodgers adjacent. And you also get an invite to a Discord group with us to talk Dodgers with other Dodger insiders, which is, fun now, but probably a lot more fun once we get into the season. So make sure to go to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnDodgers for that. And now we talk about someone that I'm sure we've mentioned his name a couple times this offseason, maybe in passing, but haven't really talked about it just for the simple fact of I think we both agree that, the Dodgers can proceed without him and they'd be fine. But that name is Joe Kelly. And the reason we're talking about Joe Kelly is because there was an interview with, I think, the Dodgers beat Dodgers beat people. Where basically said if I had to play anywhere else, I wouldn't play in regards to the Dodgers. He added, I am content all around. We have a good relationship. Like I said, once I'm healthy, it's kind of like Clayton's deal. There's only one spot to come back to. It's either that or, we'll see. So, I don't think Joe Kelly is in the same position as Clayton Kershaw in terms of the Dodgers and their desires. But if that's Joe Kelly's stance and he's not going to be healthy for a while, the Dodgers don't have a pressing need to sign him. And I guess if during the season a need arose, that would be really the only way that Joe Kelly makes any sense, right?
Yeah, it really comes down to, he had a shoulder issue. He didn't play in the postseason. And like, he himself compared himself to Clayton Kershaw, who we've talked about isn't going to be back until, mid-season ish. So if Kelly's in the same boat, it's really going to come down to what does the Dodgers bullpen look like? Because right now, Joe Kelly is not an upgrade to the Dodgers bullpen as it stands. If they get Tanner Scott, that's even more true. But because we're expecting Brusdar Graterol back at midseason, which will just make the Dodgers bullpen even stronger. But, if Graterol has a setback so he doesn't come back, and then if a couple of the top relievers get hurt, it's possible that come June, we might look at the Dodgers bullpen and be like, how in the world is Jack Dreyer pitching the 8th inning so often, and I just threw that out as he's the one guy on the 40-man roster who hasn't pitched in the big leagues. And so that's why I threw out his name, not because he's bad. Sorry, Jack, if you're listening. And in that case, maybe they do look at the situation and say, all right, well, Joe Kelly over what we have right now would be an upgrade. And so I guess there's worse situations to be in than to have a guy who throws 100 miles an hour sitting at home just hoping you'll call, because you don't have to worry about losing him. He's not going to get a call for somebody else. Oh, I'm going to go play for them instead. He's made it clear. He's just going to sit at home and wait for the Dodgers to call. And if they don't call, he's going to keep sitting at home. And, that's a decent situation to be in for the Dodgers. You and I, as Dodger fans, will cross our fingers and hope it doesn't come to that, because if we get to the point where Joe Kelly is an upgrade for this Dodgers bullpen, that means that we're having a repeat of last year when it comes to injuries to pitchers. And I would prefer not to repeat that part of last year.
Yeah. It was Bleed Los. Thank you, Alfonso, for reminding me. The Bleed Los people, that's who Joe Kelly talked to. But either way, like when it comes to Kelly, like I said, it could be a lot worse. And Joe Kelly's always tempting in that you see the stuff and you think like, man, if he just, caught fire for a streak or for a month, he could be pretty useful late in the season, specifically October. But, you also think about the other side of it, and that's the Joe Kelly experience. And that's really why there's a question, even if, he makes sense for this team at all. And yeah, it would have to be with the amount of arms the Dodgers have right now, and, knock on wood that we can say that and not have to bite, eat our words when it comes in June. But the amount of arms they have, they should be fine. And, as much as Joe Kelly has the hearts of Dodger fans and has a lot of different things and, community wise or, the mural in the stadium and all that type of stuff, it's just one of those where I appreciate you, Joe Kelly. And who knows, Joe Kelly, you can take his words at face value and think about it. But if a team comes calling and offers on, more money than he thought he would get, that there would be, I would imagine, some discussion there for him to think, oh man, maybe I don't really need to say Dodgers are bust. Maybe, this 6 to 8 million some other team gives me, which I don't know why they would, but maybe that's the reason, or maybe that's a reason why I go somewhere else. But yeah, if that remains the case, that he's true about what he's saying, then yeah, like you said, it could be a lot worse things than saying, okay, we're down 10 pitchers and, we have a guy that the very least is major league quality stuff.
Yeah. And like you said, if he gets getting healthy, it's May and he's feeling good and ready to start rehab and somebody does come calling, and that's when he's actually facing the reality of, oh, the Dodgers aren't interested, don't have room for me. So am I really ready to retire? And I think that's something he won't know the answer to until he's actually faced with answering it. And the answer might be, no, I'm not ready to retire. Especially if it was, like the Angels, who he wouldn't have to move across the country, something close to home, even the D-backs, somebody reasonably close. We'll see what happens. But the good news is, I guess, he's not going to be signed with the team by opening day because he's not going to be ready to pitch anyway, which means he can be there at the Dodgers home opener and get his ring. And, we'll see if Bronson Arroyo makes an appearance this time at the ring ceremony like last time. That was weird. But Joe Kelly will be there to get his ring, I'm sure. And like you said, he will always be a fan favorite among Dodger fans for a lot of different reasons. Most of them have involving a pouty lip. None of them involving Howie Kendrick. But in the end, Dodger fans love Joe Kelly, and I love Joe Kelly, but I would prefer to love him from a distance at this point in his career.
Yeah. So we shall see what happens with Joe Kelly, and Jack Flaherty and Roki Sasaki for that matter. But Jeff, we start the week once again. Dodgers have continued to give us stuff to talk about, and I would imagine in the next month, Roki Sasaki is really the biggest thing. Tanner Scott is possibly another thing. There may be another starting pitcher in the mix there, and then we may start getting some minor league deals with invites to spring training. So there's still a lot to come in the next month before the Dodgers start reporting to Camelback Ranch. But you got anything else before we head out?
Just one thing, a realization I had during this episode. So we're talking about Jack Flaherty, and his age is kind of an issue. He's getting a little bit older and stuff. And I looked and realized I was in college when he was born, and I'm starting to think that maybe I'm never going to make the big leagues.
Hey, you never know. You never know.
No, I think I know.
What was that dude in the rookie? He wasn't.
He was 38. I'll be 48 this year. So probably not going to happen.
Well, that's all right. There's still chances for you to contribute to baseball in a different way. So
that's right. Right here, 5 days a week, baby.
Yeah. All right. So that's going to do it for today's episode. Thank you all for listening. Thank you for making Locked On Dodgers one of the listens of your day. Make sure to find us wherever you get podcasts, and on YouTube. Make sure to subscribe. Even if you're an everydayer, but you're not subscribed, you're not helping us out as much as you possibly could. So please subscribe. We appreciate you if you already are subscribed. Remember that you can check out Locked On Sports Today and Locked On Sports Los Angeles on YouTube. Those are two 24/7 streaming channels bringing you the biggest news and stories from the sports world and the LA sports world. You can go beyond the podcast, come Locked On Dodgers Insider at joinsubtext.com/LockedOnDodgers. Get text directly from us, keeping you up to date on the Dodgers. You can find us on social media, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at Locked On Dodgers. Jeff's on Twitter at Snider. I'm at Vincent91. You can DM us any questions or comments. You can also send those via email at lockedondodgers@gmail.com. Or you can send us a text or leave us a voicemail at 323-863-5625. We're here every weekday morning, and we hope you'll be here with us. When you get in your car, if you're at home, text my device, play podcast, Locked On Dodgers. And remember, you don't have to agree. You just have to listen. Have a good one.
We'll talk to you tomorrow.